Okay. All right. So, welcome, colleagues. Welcome. Good morning. Welcome to season 3, episode 7 of the Guyana Business Journal, the magazine webinar series, Transforming Guyana. As usual, I'm your host, Dr. Terrence Blackman, chair and associate professor of mathematics at Medgar College in the City University of New York, and the founder of the Guyana Business Journal. At the journal, our mission is to help to shape a more inclusive, dynamic, and prosperous Guyana. And we do this by, championing equitable opportunity, uh, advocating for a harmonious and resilient society where every citizen benefits from the nation's economic growth. And in particular, these Transforming Guyana series really focuses on pivotal issues surrounding the country's oil and gas development by fostering sort of meaningful dialogue, bringing experts, influential Guyanese voices, and the diaspora to discuss Guyana's oil and gas sort of emergence and broad impact. The idea is to provide a balanced and insightful look at the potential benefits and pitfalls of Guyana's oil wealth, and to, help with charting a sustainable future, identifying innovative strategies to ensure that the oil revenues drive long-term national prosperity, where we draw lessons from other oil-producing nations. And it's in this context that today we're joined by one of Guyana's bright lights in infrastructure development, the Honorable David Patterson. For the worldwide audience, let me introduce David to us all. David is a member of parliament. He's the former Minister of Public Infrastructure for the Republic of Guyana. He's a distinguished professional in quantity surveying, project management, and real estate appraisal. And he has over 25 years of shaping the infrastructure development in Guyana. I suppose on the bio side, David is born in Georgetown. He began his education at the famous St. Gabriel's Primary School and attended the school on Brickdown, St. Stanislaus College, before earning a BSc with honors in quantity surveying from Greenwich University in the United Kingdom. He's a chartered quantity surveyor, a member of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors and the Architecture and Surveying Institute. And, beyond his leadership extends beyond infrastructure. He's an influential Guyanese political figure. He's been a member of parliament since, I believe, 2006, and he's served as the General Secretary of the Alliance for Change. And he's been committed to community development, leadership roles in the Guyana Amateur Basketball Federation, the Georgetown Dominoes Association, the Rotary Club of Demerara. So we're at the GBJ. We're deeply honored to have the Honorable David Patterson with us today for the hour to share his insights on Guyana's transportation infrastructure development and its future. I should say, there are two. So on a purely personal note, as many of you know, I grew up in Guyana, and my mother quite frequently says, you young people have destroyed our transportation. We grew up all the time, and we had these yellow buses, and they worked for many years, and they had well-defined routes, and they were there. And I remember as a kid, at some point, we imported these Tata buses, and the entire, it would seem, bus transportation infrastructure fell apart. We now have, congested cities, much like these Asian cities, extreme challenges, which are a function of this kind of rapid urbanization. And in a sense, I don't want to characterize, but one would say poor transportation planning. These jams are clearly reducing productivity and harm the public health through pollution. But I think we've seen the accidents, the car-centric urban development and expansion investments that we've made in public transportation is something that I think, from a distance, those of us who are concerned about Guyana's future would like to have a thought on, or like to see a bit more thinking around. And so, in that context, we noted David's recent entry into this foray, and so, David, if you don't mind me calling you David, I will open the floor to you and let you summarize some of the key proposals that you made in your recent remarks that were reported in the Demerara Waves, I believe, about the public bus system initiative, the light railway system linking Georgetown, Linden, New Amsterdam, the improvement plans for road and bridge networks, and broadly, as you see it, the sort of role for private investment in infrastructure, equitable private investment engaging in infrastructure projects. So once again, welcome. It's an absolute pleasure for you to have you join us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Terence, and good morning to your audience, everyone there. Thank you for having me. I noted your little quip, that school in Brickdam. For those of you who don't know, I attended St. Stanislaus College, which was a great rival to the school that Terence attended. And there's lots of stories on our successful ascension over that school, but that is for another day.
That's for another day.
Right. Good morning, folks. Want to speak a bit about the transportation and infrastructure challenges that we have in Guyana. By way of background, with the advent of oil and gas, as everyone knows, we're now oil producing country. Guyana has been ranked one of the fastest growing economies in the world, with GDP averaging over 40% over the last 3 to 4 years. This year alone, 2025, the GDP is slated to be around 10%. That may change because there may be another SPSO coming into production at the latter part, the fourth quarter of this year, or early in 2026. With this newfound wealth, there's been challenges, all of which were foreseeable. The importation of motor vehicles has risen over 200% over the last 3 years. Prior to 2020, the country imported about 9,000 new vehicles per year. I know to the worldwide audience, that may sound like a very small number, but for Guyana, with the state of our infrastructure, we were capable of that level of importation. However, over the last year, that has quadrupled, and we're now at about 25,000 vehicles per year, all on the existing infrastructure. While Terence has mentioned that the importation is not of passenger vehicles has risen, the largest increase has been commercial in vehicles, trucks, trailers, and the like. This is fueled by the removal of taxes on these type of vehicles. It's also the backdrop for our emerging oil and gas industry, the movement of materials to service that the construction sector has boomed. And obviously, we need to move raw materials and containers and those things like that. So that particular sector, commercial vehicles, has risen increasingly. And then additionally, there's a new issue which, on the face of it, may sound good. In urban areas, there's an upsurge of persons owning electric scooters. And they're quite cheap and affordable. And all of these vehicles are competing for the limited space within our urban centers. and this trend will continue or even increase in the future. As a country, we're addressing these challenges by expanding our existing road network. In that way, we're making single-lane roads into dual cartways as a short-term response to these challenges. That's the simplest route. However, we have to plan for the next stage. Hence, because the studies show that these expanded roadwork networks, which are not incomplete at the moment, will exceed their capacity in less than 2 years. By way of example, the new Demerara Harbor Bridge, undoubtedly when it's completed, will bring a great relief to the traveling public. However, a study done in 2018 showed that even with the new double lane, right now we have a single lane floating bridge, which is 47 years old. And we should have a new bridge sometime this year or early next year. Study in the 2018 study showed that even with the new double lane bridge, fixed bridge, that bridge would exceed its capacity within 8 years. So while we are moving ahead, we have to, and that traffic count was based on the 2018 traffic, which was 9,000 vehicles. So obviously the time span for the new bridge is lessened. Similarly,
David, I want to ask you just as a point of note. I mean, I was recently thinking about this bridge and reading something that, Joe Holder had written to me many moons ago about the development. He'd written a short historical thing about the bridge, and I don't want to divert our conversation, but I wanted to kind of acknowledge Joe Holder as the builder of
the father of the bridge.
But I also want to say something. You mentioned the fixed bridge. I don't want you to go far down the road on this, but I think in terms of the bridge that is being built now, and to the extent that we have local Guyanese input into design, input into that brought. I mean, it seems to me that we've gone from the place where we were integrally involved with building the bridge to where, it's just a company comes from someplace and builds the bridge with their own people, and then finally we just drive the cars on the bridge. And I just wanted to note that, maybe if you had a thought along those lines, and then to continue along the broader background.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, Terence. I mean, because of course the existing Demerara Bridge still remains the longest floating bridge in the world.
Yeah.
It was designed at the initial time when we designed it was for about 10 to 15 years. It has served the country for 47. This is the 47th year in existence, and it's the main artery between our two regions. And yes, you are right, Mina. And that bridge was built by the ministry, by the government, and designed by local engineers, and I think we've somehow regressed. And I can say this, I mean, if you don't mind me, I don't want to go too far. Persons such as yourself, the bright and the smartest, left. 85% of our graduates migrated during that period between the 1980 and 2016. So we suffer from that, and I think we do continue to suffer from that. I mean, obviously, there is so much expertise that started here but migrated on to other pastures. And so I make a plug. It's time for you guys to come back home, so that we don't have these persons from afar coming, and we can put a nameplate up there for once again, like we did for Joe Holder. Yes, but so yes, I was saying that the airport was designed to last for 10 to 15 years, and it was opened to full about 2018, 2019, and it reached and it has reached its capacity. That is just to explain to you how quickly we are surpassing our targets as a country. So in light of all of these challenges, foreseeable, a medium to long-term plan is required, and it has to be a multi-agency approach. I mean, I'm speaking on behalf of the infrastructure side, but we have to do this as a multi-agency report. We have to start with a high-level urban town plan for the country, or at least the major coastal regions where 90% of our population is. And we have to decide where we'll be locating on a macro scale, not a granular scale, a macro scale, future expansions. And we have to start now to reserve the space and start building our road infrastructure to accommodate these proposals, because just simply expanding roads, existing roads, will not cut it in another 2 years, So once we have a firm idea of on a global scale of what we're doing, I will propose that we create a new ministry, a ministry of transportation, separate and aside from our existing Ministry of Public Works. As you know, in the public works, they do the grunt, they look after everything: roads, bridges, the maritime sector, transportation, etc. And this ministry will be tasked specifically with dealing with our transportation measures. Of course, they will be the planners and the implementation of the transportation measure. With regard to specific issues which you would task a new, multi-agency, but headed by the ministry, a new Ministry of Transportation, I would propose that we start with Georgetown, which is, for the viewers, is our capital city, which was once considered a garden city, but obviously over the years, expansion has taken away a lot of its former luster. So we have to completely redesign, reimagine, and modernize our capital city, including our drainage system, recreational space. We have a serious challenge with of course, transportation, waste management. We have to look at that. I know these are issues that plague several, almost all the major capital cities in the world, or the urbanly dense cities in the world. We have to car parking spaces. We have to do that. We have to institute one of our things. Georgetown is on along our busiest river, the Demerara River. We have to start thinking about transportation. We shouldn't only think about bus routes and light rails and those things like that. We have to utilize our waterways, so try to get persons off of the roads and set up a water taxi system, a water transport system. Right now, all our 70 or 80% of our commercial cargo lands in Port Georgetown and is transported by road to various areas in our country. So we have to sit and reimagine Georgetown as a whole. And then obviously the expansion of the city. And while we're doing that, that is where the Ministry of Transportation comes into play. Obviously, bus routes. Right now, our entire transportation system is privately owned. What we need to do is, as Terence mentioned, go back to state-owned bus services, create new routes, which is obviously a new measure that will create employment, and designate new routes. I could recall Terence, Trinidad had a similar issue years ago, and they brought in what you call the priority bus lane, where it's a bus lane that goes through the entire city or links the city, and it was only for buses and emergency vehicles. So and that allowed them to get past that. So we have to reimagine Georgetown. We have to start planning. We have to arrest the one-term encroachment into residential zones by commercial activities, because of limitation of space, and then and start from there. That's a very short term. Get a plan for Georgetown. Then when we will move out to places like Linden. Linden is our second largest town in the country. All almost all of our natural resources pass through the tongue of Linden. And when I say pass through, they don't stop, they just drive through Linden. We have to create the situation where to make Linden a economic hub for the city. The new Linden to Lethem Road, which will link up into Brazil, passes through that township. And what is proposed on the new Ministry of Transportation is to make a transportation hub in Linden, a free zone, so that obviously, and it's along the waterway, so that when the link between Linden and Guyana and Brazil is completed, of course, we do intend to anticipate, based on several studies, that northern Brazil, which is landlocked, will utilize the ports in Guyana as an access to the Atlantic. So obviously, what we can start planning now to ensure that Linden is a transportation hub for that region, for the region. Linden also has, I think, the second longest, a lot of persons wouldn't be aware, airport in the country. It's now primarily just used for persons going in. But we have an opportunity there with that airport to make a Linden and that airport a commercial hub linking South America. These proposals are all there. Several years ago, there was
so I'm noting this question around renewable energy, and I wanted to raise something earlier for you when you talked about the public transportation expansion in Georgetown. I mean, like, what specific challenges would you see implementing a public bus system in Guyana? Like, outside of the political dimension, and how you think it. I mean, you mentioned the Trinidad model. How else might it differ in a Guyana context with the private minibus services that currently are thing now? And the question of affordability and accessibility of a bus system, particularly for folks who, and maybe is there some opportunities for the private sector or international agencies? That's what this comment made me think. Is there some opportunities for, is it a bus system that is configured around renewable energy and that has an opportunity for international partners and business people to participate? What's your vision as you see that unfolding?
Well, quite seriously, I mean, that is one of the plans. As you know, Todd, that we will be at some point in time bringing in natural gas into the onshore. There were proposals by powering our public transportation by natural gas. There's also proposals, obviously, once we're able to get cheap energy to electric buses and those things. And the only challenge that I would see for a bus service, and let me make this quite clear, Todd, that most transportation systems, both public transportation in the world, are subsidized by the government. The government will have to provide generous concessions to any private individual, and I don't see us not doing that. The major challenge we have is once again planning and creating the bus routes, creating the space for these larger buses to pass, and they can coexist with the existing private minibus services, just like in any other city. And obviously, we would like to probably do. You can actually even offer the private minibuses to transition in by partnership into owning one of these a bus route or so. You know what I mean? So there, and then obviously we would like private individuals to run the bus system or light rail system, just as it's done in New York and other places. Yes, and obviously the question of subsidized, as I mentioned, transportation is a must. I mean, I have proposed that all pensioners and school children be allowed to travel on any new bus system free of cost as a contribution recognition, one of our pensioners' contribution to our society, as well as that ensure that it is more affordable for school children and teachers to get to school. And yes, and I mean, obviously, as a way of wealth distribution, obviously, I mean, we would definitely look at free or subsidized, heavily subsidized. That was done before. That's nothing new, Terence. When we were kids, you were able. We did have a free bus service. Yeah. So going on, obviously, what we're also proposing is to have a orbital road network. You know, I mean, linking up. I mean, linking our townships in our outline with Perica, which is on the Essequibo River, and you link it all the way up to Rossignol, Berbice, which is on our Berbice River, and we have a orbital road highway network, whereby so obviously we do away with this what we have now, a grid pattern network, whereby we just north to south, east to west. And we start doing that now, so it's quite easy. It's quite not technically challenging. We don't have any mountains to cross. We do have swamplands, but the engineering solutions to that is quite easy, quite simple. We also would like to propose there's be a cargo link between Guyana, Brazil for commercial cargo. We'd also like to propose a study. We have a light railway system, automated light railway system for passenger use from our urban centers. So therefore, if we plan all of these right now, and we start working towards these right now, within a couple of years, we should be able to quickly alleviate our issues. We also
just a thought there, you know, as you think about that, you know, just to put something hard to, I mean, what would, you know, let's say you had the opportunity to do this, like what would the expected costs timeline for a light railway system between Georgetown, Linden, New Amsterdam look like? You know, how does that get integrated into the already existing roads and your already existing system, so that, you know, your commuters have a nice smooth ride? And maybe lastly, I'd say, you know, what regional models, international models you might point to?
Yeah. So the major challenge would be in the center of the city, because that is extremely congested for a light railway. But we do have the space right now. We can put a light railway all the way from the East Bank. Right now, it can even be integrated into the Heroes Highway, which we have at the moment. It could get all the way down to into the center. But when we do hit past St. John Road, which is the dense urban centers, and cost-wise, we had priced this out years ago, about 5-6 years ago, and we were at that time about just shy of $1.2 billion, getting us from, we had looked from Diamond, and we were trying to get as far as Mahaica. Obviously, I mean, and these are the automated or the simple light railway that you know, like you would the sky trains, what you have, and they can be elevated, obviously, to contain space. The major challenge, obviously, was then it was the provision of reliable, stable electricity, which we're still grappling with. You can imagine the nightmares of having somebody on a light trail, and GPL does what it does quite regularly to us. So I mean, obviously we have to relook at it, but it can be elevated, and just like in like the air trains, it can be elevated and done quite easily. You know, I mean, a dual, and that will at least get you into a central location, just on the outskirts of the city, and then of course the urban bus network will take over to get in the heart of the city. So these are not very technical challenges, but we have to obviously start doing them now. We have to determine once and for all where we're going to locate our deep water ports. I mean, there's several studies. Current government has been mooting Berbice for quite some time, but we did a study by commission in collaboration with the IDB. We got a port, one of the leading port designers out of I think it was the Netherlands, and they had recommended another location, which is more on the region 5 area. They had recommended that area because obviously the heavy siltation that we have, and that would have been the least amount of work required. But the country can have more than one port. I mean, as I said, in Linden, we can have one in for Demerara area, we can have one in Region 5, and for the Berbice area, and we link them all up right now with a rail system. Renewable energies obviously will can have to be part of this this project. Bridges, additional bridges, regional airports. There was a proposal, as I said once, which came in several years ago after hurricane I was mentioning, where I think was either DHL or FedEx. There was a hurricane. I think their regional hub was in Puerto Rico, and I think that one of the major hurricanes decimated it. And they had expressed an interest of why not using Guyana, one of our existing areas, as a cargo hub, so that they can fly instead of at Puerto Rico. You fly from here. Amazon, somebody from Amazon and Amazon Distributions also use that, because of course we're an English-speaking country. We're the tip of South America. You can have an air cargo hub here and go to the rest of South America. The Brazilian government has also asked us to look into upgrading Linden Airport, and this is for not cargo. And strange enough, and it was eye-opening for me. Pharmaceuticals have certain pharmaceuticals have very short shelf life, and they came up with the plan to get to northern Brazil, which is a massively big area. They said it would be easier to fly to Linden, which is on the border of Brazil, and distribute their pharmaceuticals to northern Brazil from Linden or an area close by. So the possibilities of our transportation network and our renewable network are vast, are endless. And as you can see, the private sector could then just call about few companies who over the years expressed an interest in using here as a hub. We have to put the plans in place now. I mean, it's not a short-term plan. We have to put the plans in place now. As I said, I'll get a macro-level plan and then move forward. So that would be generally it. I mean, I open myself up to questions. I mean, I don't want to get too granular into specifics.
No, but you've been getting a lot of questions, and I looked at this one from Erwin Allicock, and I wanted to sort of piggyback, on this question, because that's kind of something that we observe now. I mean, every single day when you go on Facebook, someone is posting a video about a road that is halfway done, or and so there's a sense in which there's not like a culture that is configured around maintenance, and so I wanted to maybe ask you to kind of assess, the plans that exist to improve the road bridge infrastructure, and to ensure, what are the strategies in place to address maintenance and sustainability and concern these projects as you think about the projects that you're thinking about in the future, and maybe to kind of go deeper on the question that Erwin noted, thinking what are ways in which business and communities need to be involved in development, execution, and maintenance of these projects. Well, how do you see those?
So Erwin is absolutely correct. There must be a maintenance plan one of the major issues whenever we approached finances in the past, one of the major issues that they always asked us, because we were always going for them for funding to build a new road, and they were like, you must have a maintenance program on. And that's absolutely correct. And it starts, as I said, it starts with our planning. You mean we have survived and survived and done well with just our existing plans. We have too many agencies. I mean, I don't know how it is in other parts of the world, but we have too many agencies doing roads, and each agency, unfortunately, has their own standards. So that's what a Department of Transportation would do: correct standards. You know what I mean? You're building a housing scheme. Minimum width of a road is this amount, this design. You know what I mean? And obviously, we had started we had started geotagging roads. You know what I mean? We had bought a machine in from, I can't remember where it was, with a LiDAR and surveying machine, which was going through. I do hope they still do it at the moment, but I know we brought this specialist equipment from New Zealand, to be honest. I can remember New Zealand. And what it was doing is digitizing all our roads. I mean, so you drive this vehicle over the road, and it takes a sonar and a LiDAR survey of the quality of the road, and we had it on a map, and obviously it showed up the thickness of the rigid pavement, the potholes, and based on that, I do trust that they still use it to the moment, because that, you know, obviously I haven't been into the ministry since 2020, and based on that, we developed a map. We worked to develop a map where would have been able to for us to most adequately predict where the next failure are, or to prioritize which areas was to be done. So obviously, Urban, we must have a maintenance plan in conjunction with whatever you do.
And actually, maybe follow up on Erwin with this question from Ulrich, which is the larger version of the maintenance plan, which is, if there's a climate thing goes bad, the whole thing goes bad. And so, to what extent are the infrastructure decisions, to what extent are we being informed by some comprehensive climate risk assessments to kind of ensure the enduring functionality, sustainability of these systems?
Climate change mitigation in design is paramount. As I started off by saying, Ulrich, we have to make some tough decisions and some firm decisions, long-term decisions. Georgetown, what are we going to be doing with Georgetown, and to what extent? It's people don't like to hear it because your neighbors string.
I think
Georgetown is below sea level.
Yeah,
and we can.
No. I think Ulrich and Ivlog Griffith have been the two people who've been saying somehow the thing is going to flood out and you have to move it inland. But I know you guys have started to move it inland. But the last photos I've seen from the Silica City says, I'm not sure, and I don't want to comment on that, that you're really seriously moving inland. So I'll let you.
Well, Silica City is just an urban residential or a thing, but we have to make some decisions. You know what I mean, and to keep and it is salvageable. I mean, we can't keep it there, but what we have to do now is what we have been doing over the last 20, 30 years, 20 years, 10, 20 years. Is using up all the areas within the city that was used for our water retention, because we primarily drain by gravity. So there are several catchment areas that you would have that would allow the water to stay there. We have to seriously think about that. We have to seriously do the modeling. If the data is correct, and I'm absolutely sure it is, that the sea is rising, I think by 1 or 2 centimeters per year. You know what I mean? You could literally predict the end of the city as we know it. But I do think that if we sit and we design the city knowing these challenges, we can, as we move outwards, as we move southwards, we can actually salvage the city. So obviously, Ulrich, for sure, we have to design with the climate in mind. As a personal peeve for me is that, as I started out saying it out, that we're widening our existing roads from single lane to dual cartways. As a consequence, what we're doing as well is narrowing our drainage network. So, I mean, you have to take the space somewhere. So I do fear that at some point in time, we will run into a challenge with drainage, particularly in the coast, as well as the outer areas, and because riverfront property has become extremely valuable because our oil and gas is offshore. And what we're seeing along the Demerara River is every single foot someone is putting up a commercial riverfront space. If we don't start making preparations for that now, reserving particular areas for that at this stage, I think we will be just repeating the experiences that we had in the past. Yeah, so definitely have to
yeah. So one of the questions, so one of the issues we often come to the transportation issue in Guyana is around around the accidents. And I remember some years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I read this really wonderful paper from a young woman at the University of Guyana, whose name now completely escapes me. Anyway, she had worked out all of this business about how to reduce accidents. And it seems like every single day, people show up and they say, it seems like a accepted part of life. And in Jersey City where I live, I think for the last 2 years, we've had zero transportation fatalities. And that's in function of just the design of roadways, right? So it's a technical problem that can be addressed. And so, Raw notes the following. As you think this through, what are some of your thoughts around measures needed for transportation safety, assurance, confidence, use of bus services, driver's license, crash control mechanisms, etc., so that we don't have like a cascade, a new set of like transportation risks to be. I mean, is this something that you've been thinking about?
No, of course. Obviously, it comes to driver education. It comes to enforcement. Our big challenge is enforcement of we have all the laws. Enforcement of the laws. Obviously, the road designs. Because of, as I was saying to you, we have a grid system. I mean, it's one of the issues that you would have is at the right angles at intersections, straight right angles at intersections, so you can't easily merge into traffic from another direction. We definitely have to do driver education and more stringent licensing measures. I don't know what's the age limit in other countries, but right now, because of the shortage of labor, we're having teenagers. I mean, you just got your license, they're driving trucks, these big articulated trucks, because obviously there's a shortage of drivers, and they literally just received their driver's license, and they're now being given the authority to drive a truck or a minibus, and so we have to do better than that. So it's a comprehensive issue. Don't forget as well, Terence, that we will also be facing a labor challenge, a labor shortage challenge, and that obviously contributes to it, whereby unqualified persons, because of this shortage, are being allowed to drive our roads. The question, as I said, we have to reimagine it. For bus and bus services, obviously, my idea is there will be a dedicated bus lane. So for passengers, so obviously, the bus, and I'm saying the private big state buses will have a single lane, not commingle with the minibuses and those things like that. So hopefully that would bring some level of safety to the entire proceedings.
So actually, I just remembered the name. The name of the young woman is Shauna May Rose, and she wrote a paper, I think, in like a Brazilian journal that I read some years ago, where she went through this business of like really looking at the traffic and looking at the fatalities. It'd be a good paper for someone to look at. And I think she came down to the point that you just made, which was, there needed to be more effective enforcement of some of the already existing rules. But it's a good paper, and I would highly recommend it. Shauna May Rose, that's the name. If I don't,
Yeah, I look for that. On a side, Terence, Colombia, right? We were using they have a very good system, and they had the same challenges, Medellin and those places that we have. I mean, urban encroachment in urban spaces, and they were effective in changing it. One of the measures which I don't know if your viewers would know that we still have what we call donkey carts and horse carts doing transportation on our roads. So therefore, we have the entire spectrum of road users. You have these little electric scooters that scoot around below your eyesight. You have donkey and horse-driven cars pulling cargo. You have passenger vehicles. You have canters now doing commercial distribution. And then you have the heavy articulated trucks and the container movement, all using the same road, all at the same time. I know in other cities there time limits between when they can't use it over certain. That was tried. On our tenure, we tried restricting the trucks and the containerized trucks from using the road, and we got a tremendous pushback from the private sector. First, the most obvious reason that they give is that they're delivering to commercial entities who close at a certain time. Our labor law says if anyone works in the evening, it's double pay. So they said that will increase traffic. And then, of course, for the construction industry, the delivery of the material. So we had a tremendous pushback for that. So all we were able to do is to restrict them, try to get them off the road during rush hours. But that hasn't been successful. And I do think that this government is grappling with that as well.
It's interesting. I'll come back to that question, but I wanted you to you mentioned the government and grappling with, and so that's KP here is suggesting the per kilometer cost of the currently issued road building tenders seem generous by international benchmarks, and the question is sort of what are the norms, and are they generous first off, and then what are the broad norms that are associated with this kind of thing?
Well,
I guess KP's is only getting value for money in
right. To answer KP's question, we have to start on standards, design standards. The Ministry of Public Works have design standards, but most of the roads, I say several agencies, the Ministry of Housing at the moment who are building all the highways. I don't know why, but they're building it. They don't have any design standards. Their standards are the standards for internal roads and those things like that. So therefore, obviously, you would get that cost now. The cost per kilometer now it's like about 400 to 500,000 US, up from several years per kilometer of road. But this is not highway road, meaning that cost that I'm quoting there, and most of the major roads are being built now are done by the Ministry of Housing, and their standards are for internal roads, which is simply vehicular traffic, non-commercial traffic. But somehow or the other, they've been able to get away with that. So that's why you see, back to the question Urban asked, that's why you see that they're failing so quickly at the moment, and obviously now comes into maintenance. So in some cases, because of our challenges, we sacrifice in design for expediency. But they are, by international standards, obviously, if you build a road to the highway, US highway codes, that number should triple or quadruple per kilometer. But we're building roads for internal travel and calling them highways.
Yeah. There's any thought in this direction. So there's a suggestion around the introduction of driver education in secondary schools. I mean, that's not, but I suppose it's peripherally related to the set of transportation challenges. Uh, it's one of the things that I think in terms of the broad educational posture. You've mentioned a set of challenges. You now have 19-year-olds driving articulated vehicles without the kind of, I mean, to what extent is there a place for the integration of that sort of thing within the school curriculum?
Yes, there is, and yet this is an opportunity for the private sector here as well. I mean, this should not only be in the state. In other countries, I mean, certain aspects of MOTs, vehicle check, fitness checks are given out or subcontracted out to private individuals. I'm sure if someone comes up with a plan, they can actually introduce it with the help. I mean, obviously, I do think government should subsidize it. It saves lives and those things like that. And it shouldn't not just be the government alone. I mean, I do think that there are agencies, private agencies all around the world that teaches these things and that already have a preset package there. So that's one way I think the private sector can work with us as a government.
So 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 Barbara sort of raises this issue of a question of eminent domain. So these are all in a sense peripheral things, but they are important because I think it's important to get a sense of how people are thinking about this. What are your thoughts on, I remember observing some of these questions relative to the design of the new bridge and people talking about their land and so on. I mean, is there an articulated posture on your side about, what eminent domain laws would look like in that context?
I mean, look, to make an omelet, you have to break an egg, right? And it's true. So therefore, once we have a plan, particularly in Georgetown, because the area is so congested, we definitely would have to acquire at fair market value lands that are on the existing use. So the faster we get a plan out, faster we know what we want to do, we should put that in force and inform everyone. But for the wider urban space, I mean, Guyana is like a blank canvas other than these, the Georgetown and those areas. I mean, we have enough space once we put our plans in place. But when you do get to the center of the city, we definitely have to be acquiring some properties. I mean, all the cities, I don't think New York City and Connecticut Avenue and those things like that could have been what it was without the city planners having to acquire some properties. But if you have a plan, you could stop people investing their hard-earned money right now. But you do have to find ways of creating this space for the expansion of the transportation network. And it should be done in an equitable manner, not quite unlike what was done elsewhere.
Yeah, this has been a really wonderful conversation. I'm looking at the clock. It's already 23, and as I noted at the beginning, I have to, I think, I know. I mean, we said we'd end at 11:30. So let me take an opportunity. Let me do this. I'll say thank you for really sharing some valuable insights on Guyana's transportation infrastructure challenges and the proposed solutions. I think your vision for transforming Guyana's transportation system is comprehensive. I like the idea of a Ministry of Transportation. We have here the Metropolitan Transit Agency, the MTA, and the Port Authority, and these are institutions that are dedicated specifically to this question. I think it's comprehensive and really forward thinking. And you've highlighted sort of the urgent need for certainly a multi-agency approach to urban planning, particularly for the coastal regions where you have 90% of the population. There's some thoughts there about how I think there's some questions there about the environmental mitigation and 90% of the roads being on the coastal side, and maybe what we haven't explored in this conversation, sort of like what this transportation infrastructure looks like across the broader interior. I think you've nicely talked about how you reimagine Georgetown as a modern capital city, improved drainage, recreational spaces, and addressing some of the urban challenges. Linden as an economic hub, transportation center for the region, leveraging the strategic location there, airport. Really, I think that presents some exciting opportunities for development. The orbital road network, potential light rail. Actually, someone mentioned subway. Is there a possibility for a subway within the context of that? I don't know if that works.
But that was one of the considerations when we were looking at the bridge. You mean do a tunnel under
the Demerara River?
Under the Demerara River. That was one of the but it was more economical to do a bridge than a subway. I can't say we've never examined doing a subway in Georgetown or the capital city. Obviously we already have our challenges. You're already below sea level. So we're trying to raise the city rather than do anything to do that. I'm sure Mr. Trotz would have an idea on that, but we to be honest, we have not examined the issue of a subway, particularly in Georgetown. I think as you get further out, it becomes far more feasible, which is, the soil is different. You're above sea level. You have more space. One of the issues which we haven't gone into when we started talking the whole transportation, we have to as a country, we have to re-examine the sizes of our house lots. And population density and those things like that. I particularly peeved with you that in a country like Guyana, you only get to 50 or 40 by 80 house lot. So we just doing that. We have to re-examine how we do. One of the major challenges of road expansion is utilities. Yeah. We have to now they have dedicated utility corridors, so you don't have so many overhead poles. Of course, when we started, it was very cheap in the most sustainable manner. But now, as you are going to develop, we have to have dedicated utility corridors, maybe underground, far away. Then you have gas coming. We have to start taking into consideration of piping gas to our citizens. And so we have to start. And that's what mother countries do, and you have to start thinking that we may not be able to get there at right away, but if you're considering it, you have to reserve the space and reserve the planning and such forth. We can't wait. This is not the field of dreams, build it and it will come. We have to plan it and it will happen.
Well, David, I really want to continue to encourage you to advocate for these visionary plans, and I think your insights have been really kind of eye-opening for us today, and I want to commend you for your commitment to continuing to shape a more efficient and sustainable and equitable transportation system for Guyana, and also to thank the audience who've participated really nicely in this exercise, and to give you a minute or so to say any last words that you have in mind.
Thank you very much, Terence. Thank you for having me, ladies and gentlemen. Guyana, in my eyes, is the jewel not of the Caribbean, the jewel of the world. We have a blank canvas, and we can paint if we all collectively come together a masterpiece. We're fortunate to see what has happened in other countries. We can learn from them. There's comparisons, us being little Dubai and those things like that. That comparison is just GDP wise, but we had abundance of all natural resources. Renewable energies. We can be the leader in renewable energies. We can be the hub for South America. All it needs is vision and will. And the opportunities are there for every single person, home and abroad, Guyanese, non-Guyanese. I mean, we have a serious labor shortage, so obviously not only so there is opportunity for everyone there. I would encourage everyone to, I mean, obviously what we need now is a new national development strategy plan with all stakeholders. It will take some time, but we do have the building blocks to do it. And once that is done, the world can join us in making what I do think that we want to, all Guyanese would love to aspire to be a beacon in South America. You know what I mean? We can, outside of oil and gas, we can earn much more if we leverage our location, our language, our climate, and just for South America, forget going, if we go south. I mean, primarily everything is going north, but if we can start looking southwards as well, the future is really bright. Thank you.
Thank you, David Patterson. On that note, the future is indeed really bright, and we want to, we hope that you and others like you will continue to be a part of that bright future for Guyana. Thank you much, and have a wonderful day. It's been a wonderful conversation, and
thank you very much, Terence. Bye.
Appreciate it. Thank you, colleagues.